Hello everyone, this is R.S. Miller at the endtimenews.org, and today is March 9th, 2014. These are the days where it is quite possible and even probable that if left to ourselves, mankind will be annihilated. Whether it comes from wars, man-made pollutants, or so-called natural causes, the conditions are increasingly ripe for our own extinction. Considering all of the conflicts globally and unprecedented environmental changes which are taking place, it would be prudent to stock up on emergency food, water, and supplies. Now, I'm not trying to scare anyone, but instead, I'm simply trying to warn folks to prepare for what's inevitably coming our way. Let's take a look at some of the recent news and the potential for nuclear war. The crisis in Crimea intensifies as U.S. warns Russia against moves for annexation of Crimea. In a phone call with Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Saturday, Secretary of State John Kerry made clear that continued military escalation and provocation in Crimea or elsewhere in Ukraine, along with steps to annex Crimea to Russia, would close any available space for diplomacy, and he urged the utmost restraint. Russia is considering a freeze of U.S. military inspections under the START Treaty, which is a nuclear arms reduction treaty, in retaliation for Washington's decision to halt military cooperation with Russia. Meanwhile, on the ground in Crimea, Ukrainian border guards said Saturday that one of their observation planes came under fire while patrolling the region. And the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the OSCE, reported warning shots when its observers' mission tried to enter the peninsula. Considering the potential for war over Iran's nuclear program, Ashton expresses doubt on reaching a final agreement. Ashton says no guarantee of Iran nuclear deal. EU Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton has said there is no guarantee that talks with Iran on the disputed nuclear program will lead to a comprehensive final agreement. She made her comments on Sunday during her first trip to the Islamic Republic. She stated that the interim agreement is really important, but not as important as a comprehensive agreement. It's difficult, challenging, and there is no guarantee that we will succeed. An Iranian official had said that they will only accept a deal which respects its rights, which is a reference to uranium enrichment. However, within the past year, Israeli officials have stated that they will not accept any deal with Iran that leaves its enrichment capabilities intact. On Sunday morning, Israeli troops in Elliot unloaded approximately 150 containers suspected of holding Iranian arms from a ship seized several days earlier in the Red Sea. At least some of these arms were Iranian missiles bound for Gaza. It's being reported that these weapons would have placed millions of Israelis in danger. Had these weapons been successfully delivered and used, there should be little doubt that Israel would have retaliated against Iran as well as Gaza. Although the IDF was able to prevent the shipment from getting through, how will Jerusalem view the attempt to place such sophisticated and dangerous weapons in the hand of their enemies in Gaza? When taking into consideration the fact that on multiple occasions the radical leadership of Iran has threatened to wipe Israel off the map, are in the process of enriching uranium and developing ICBMs capable of delivering nuclear warheads, then a retaliatory or preemptive strike on Iran by Israel is not out of the question. Such an event could easily lead to a war which would engulf the entire region. Continuing focus on the Middle East, the peace process between Israel and the Palestinians, which is being brokered by the U.S., is anything but peaceful. I believe that the peace process, albeit a sincere effort by the West, is little more than a delaying tactic. Multiple efforts to establish peace and an equal number of failures. The idea of giving land for peace didn't work in Gaza. What makes anyone think it will work now? Pressuring Israel to abandon Judea and Samaria, otherwise known as the West Bank, in order to create a Palestinian state will only serve to hasten the inevitable. The terrorist factions and Iran's proxy soldiers, which virtually surround Israel, will end up with a more strategic position from which to destroy the Jewish state. This is a conflict which dates back several thousand years, and it can't be solved simply by giving up a little land. From the Islamic side of the equation, there's a fundamental belief that once Islamic land, always Islamic land, and the true believer must strive to get it back by any means necessary and never give up. Having said that, this peace process will do nothing except delay what's coming, and that is nuclear war. Then we have the Asia-Pacific region, another hotspot that could well set the entire planet on fire. The current tensions between nuclear-armed China and Japan over a tiny group of uninhabited islands known as the Diaoyu in Chinese and Senkaku by the Japanese threatens to start war. If in fact the war does start, the U.S. has an agreement with Japan for its protection, and we would have no other choice but to get involved. Recently, China issued a not-so-discreet warning to the U.S. in which they showed a map of all the American cities that their nuclear missiles could reach. In addition, it's been reported that China now has a submarine capable of launching nuclear missiles from somewhere out in the Pacific. Or, who knows, perhaps they'll creep around to the Atlantic side or the Gulf. And of course, let us not forget about North Korea's psychopathic dictator, Kim Jong-un, who has on multiple occasions threatened to nuke the U.S. It's alleged that he has nuclear warheads and may well have the delivery system to carry out those threats. By the way, the war between North and South Korea has never been officially declared over. And of course, the U.S. was involved in the first war, and should it begin again, we will once again be involved, but this time with far deadlier consequences. Recently, China stated that they wouldn't allow a war on the Korean Peninsula. I took it to mean that China was implying they would keep Mad Kim on a leash. However, when all things are considered, one would have to wonder about their sincerity. Although the inevitability of a worldwide thermonuclear war is as certain as death and taxes, there are other reasons that one should prepare for disaster. I will just mention a couple. Global warming and climate change, causing polar ice to melt, raising sea levels, producing more severe storms, flooding, as well as causing drought and food shortages, and even inflation. Also, is it possible that we are seeing an increase in earthquake and volcanic activity due to increasing temperatures on the planet? I think that it's certainly possible. And finally, what about asteroids? Scientists have been saying for a while now that it's not a matter of if an asteroid hits the Earth, but instead, when. Recently, the Earth has been virtually inundated with near-miss space rocks, some of which have exploded or burned up in the atmosphere. Just this past Wednesday, a significantly large asteroid passed between the Moon and the Earth. In astronomical terms, that's like the thickness of a cat's whisker or less. Had this asteroid hit a populated area on the Earth, it would have at the least killed thousands or possibly even millions, along with the destruction of the city or the town where it hit. But of course, That's provided it wasn't large enough to be a planet killer. Friends, any sort of catastrophe could happen at any time, whether it's something like nuclear war or a more localized natural event such as a tornado or an earthquake. If we do not prepare by stocking up on food, water, and supplies, we may find ourselves facing dire circumstances. Help may arrive eventually, that is, if there hasn't been a total collapse of government and society. But if there has been, we may well find ourselves completely on our own. However, the same way we should prepare to physically survive a catastrophe, we should also prepare to spiritually survive as well. In other words, we should prepare for the day when we meet Jesus Christ. In Matthew 4:4, Jesus said, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." World War III is coming. The Battle of Armageddon, the return of Jesus Christ, and the judgment. In the physical world, it is possible to survive if you have adequate food, water, and shelter. But the only way to survive the coming of God's judgment is by the salvation He offers to all of us through His Son, Jesus Christ. We are living in the last days, and eternity is far too long to spend in the wrong place. Assure your salvation by giving your life to Jesus today. Follow the link in the box below and pray the prayer of salvation with a sincere heart, and you will be saved. May God bless you.